Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to continue with Tunacons webinars. For those who do not know much about Tunacons, Tunacons is a conservation project for tropical tuna fishing with Persane. It's comprised by 5 companies, 4 Ecuadorian ones and 1 US company with 44 vessels operating in the EPO. And we committed to generate a fishery improvement project, but with the Marine Stewardship Council. Part of the work Tunacons has been carried out through its action plan has to do with several aspects of the 3 principles stated by the MCC. So principle 2 says we need to reduce the impact, sea impact, and also reducing the pollution in marine ecosystems. In this action plan, before continuing, it is important to tell you that we have simultaneous translation. Lower in your screen, you can go into English translation for those wanting to listen to this presentation in English. One of the important topics in Principle 2 that has been developed by Tunacons together with several organizations and specialists has to do with the development of non-entangling fats. For us, this is the next step for tropical tuna fishing for it to become sustainable. As I was telling you a bit ago, we have simultaneous translation into English that you can find in the lower part of your screen. During this webinar, the second account seminar, we're going to present and explain the EcoFads project, all of the processes we've gone through to develop an entangling and degradable fats. During the presentation, we're also going to have some polls that will help us get your points of view with your knowledge and also suggestions on your behalf regarding the work carried out with Tunacons regarding unentangling degradable fats. You will also be able to write questions and comments through this Zoom's chat for you to be able to ask about everything we are presenting this moment. One first question that we would like to ask you, this is a short poll. What do you think is the main problem with fats? The first option would be identifying a possible overfishing and possible excessive fishing effort marine waste as the second option, meaning that fats might be considered sea waste, and a third option having to do with bycatch fishing. We would like to know what of these problems is the main one of tuna fisheries with fats.
Ok, muchas gracias por su respuesta. Para nosotros
Thank you very much for your answers. It is very important for us to have this feedback regarding fats. Here we can see the result. It's pretty much balanced, but bycatch, according to the people who has answered, is at a 38% as the main problem where we should be working in depth with tuna fishing. Thank you for your comments. Why is it necessary to find new alternatives to replace traditional fats our fishermen use? This was the first statement, we asked as Tunacons if it was an important aspect for working because there was uncertainty, there were questions, queries, and research done that showed us that this is one of the paths to follow as Tunacons to help reduce the impact of traditional fats to turn them into unentangling 100% biodegradable fats. Basically, the considerations we had, the reasons we had to develop this sort of fats was entanglement of vulnerable species such as sharks, turtles, rays, and even though it wasn't a great number of bycatch in this sense, because actually the catch was minimum, it is important and necessary to help reduce this impact. Therefore, we decided that within the criteria Tunacons will hold would be to develop an untangling fats. Another point was seeing if these fats that may be lost, it's not frequent, but they may be lost, as they were made of plastic or byproducts. If they got lost, as you all know, this sort of material does not degrade fast and will be contributing to sea waste and pollution. Therefore, we set the objective of developing a 100% degradable fat. Here we have a second poll, a second question for you. Do you know if regional marine fisheries organizations have established a fat limit per vessel in all oceans? Yes or no?
Por favor, mientras si van respondiendo,
Please, as you answer this question,
conociendo las opiniones de ustedes respecto a esta consulta que les
we'll be
hacemos.
getting your opinions on what you think about this. We all know that fats, well, here we have the answers, and most people believe that there are
Plantados,
no fats limit per vessel, and actually the answer is that yes, there are established limits in all of the fishing regional fishing organizations. So even though this limit is still being worked on by experts and organizations, we have a baseline limit and we're studying whether to reduce or to keep it that way in the upcoming years.
ok, siguiendo con la presentación,
Continuing with the presentation,
importante decir que
it is important
a
to
la Comisión
say
Interamericana de
that
Clima Tropical ya en
at
el año
the
2018
IATTC
se
Commission
estableció
during
la
2018,
resolución, la
a
61805,
resolution
para determinar
C1805 was established to determine the
unos tiburones
criteria
plantados que sean
of
antillantes y degradables.
developing
Esta
and
resolución
entangling
se realizó
degradable
en la
fats. This
Comisión
resolution was taken in
de
during
San Diego,
2018
California,
in
donde
San
los
Diego,
países
California, at a meeting
participantes
where all the
aprobaron
countries
criterios.
were agreed on to stating
Un
this.
componente importante de esta resolución, una
Elements. An
parte importante de
important
esta
part
resolución es
of
que
this
ya se
resolution
determinaba una
is
fecha
that
de
a date had
cumplimiento
been determined
cuando
for the
estos vehículos
compliance so that all of the
transportaban
fleet will be
fluidos
using
marino.
an
Era el
entangling
primer objetivo que debía
fats.
lograr
This
esta
was the main
resolución,
objective that
que
this
se logró
resolution
con
had
motivo del primer
to
atúnero de
carry out
descubrimiento en el Océano
C1805,
Tropical,
and since January
antes del
2019,
Golfo del
the
Pacífico,
tuna fleet
está
in
usando
all over the
dispositivos
Pacific Ocean
antillantes
is
en base a
using
unas
an
recomendaciones del
entangling
personal científico del CIAT y de hecho
fats based on the IATTC experts'
justamente también
recommendations
este
and
primer
other
paso
aspects as
fue el
well.
primer objetivo
This
que
non-entangling fats were main objective, and
que
basically
se
the
puede
characteristics that you can that
esta
we
parte
can tell you about this part, this non-entangling part, is that if the floating component has coverage,
si es de malla, debería ser de
if
una malla
it's mesh, it should be stretching mesh with less than 7 centimeters and it needs to be well stretched throughout the structure of the floating part of the fat so that there is nothing hanging there. Another important part, something important in the tail design is that we need to prevent the usage of net, and if it is used, it needs to be as tight as possible in a sausage-like shape, just as you see here in the pictures in this slide. This is a model of the fat that's being used by vessels with hanging parts. So this is something we are complying with, having non-entangling projects based on the technical recommendations of experts of IATTC and other experts. They are actually checking the effectiveness of this work, but according to the main first recommendations, this would be the best result to prevent any bycatch in the stored of material and fats. In this way, the tuna fleet of the EPO using fats is also significantly contributing in keeping marine diversity. Another important aspect of resolution C1805, which later on became C1901, because every year the Tuna Commission with the scientific community go over these resolutions and the results, and so they carried out a revision during the 2019 meeting and an amendment to C1805 was stated to improve some criteria of the second part of this resolution, which is getting fats to be built with biodegradable materials. The focus of this part in the resolution is mainly reducing the amount of synthetic marine waste using natural biodegradable material to improve the fats. We want to ask you another question, harnessing this webinar. Now, landing at international level, what the IATTC does, or in this specific case of Ecuador, do you know if Ecuador has a fat management plan that their tuna fleet carries out? Yes or no? Please be so kind as to answer the question. Do you know if in Ecuador there is a fat management plan? Thank you very much for your answers. It is very important to get to know what you think about this. And great. Most people knows that yes, indeed, in Ecuador has a national fat management plan so that through the government, together with the private sector participation with this plan, all of the regulations issued by the Tuna Commission and also national regulations that would be analyzed to improve the management and the impact of fats in Ecuador. Actually, Ecuador is one of the countries that uses this sort of equipment, this sort of gear the most, and actually it has a national plan. It's actually the only country in the region that has an FAT and fat management plan, and this was approved by the end of last year. So, talking about our experience in Ecuador regarding this resolution, this process of having non-entangled and degradable fats, what we did first was analyzing the capacity that Ecuador had to have natural material, and we found 25 different sorts of natural fibers that could be used and which are actually used by your craftsmen. Materials, palm, the quilla straw, and others were several vegetable fibers that were analyzed by our technical team in Tunacons. So next, we're going to talk about our initiative or the test, all of the work we did, we've been doing for 4 years with our technical staff, with the support, obviously, of our fleet heads of the 5 companies, with the support of captains and crew members to test this material. And we think the variety of material, vegetable fibers that were tested, mainly for the flowing part of the fat, we started using a material that here we call jute, that according to the first test carried out by the technical staff, degraded too fast. Then we started using another material, which is called agave, which resisted even more than jute. But the most promising fiber is abaca in its natural form. And now let's go into the next video. For those people listening in English, you're going to have to go back to the Spanish version for you to be able to listen to the video. Oh, no, don't worry. Just remain in the English channel. You are going to watch the following videos. Something that I have to explain is that with jute, we carried out a test with a prototype fat. With agave, we carried out 66 tests, and with abaca, we carried out a larger test with 424 prototypes of fats at sea. Here we have the video for you to be able to better understand this initial part of the process.
This is a summary of the experience of Tunacons testing fads with biodegradable material and with vegetable fiber being used for its floating and hanging part. On September 25 of 2017, a fad with abaca fiber and 2 tails of 10 meters each was deployed. The first monitoring was done on October 17 of 2017. At that time, the fad had 22 days deployed. And the canes and balsa stick on the floating part were found in good condition, as well as the mooring line was presenting inlays. In the hanging part, the fabric also had inlays. The ropes were in good condition and still had the stones as ballast. The second monitoring was after 37 days from deployment on the 1st of November of 2017. Both the structure and the hanging part were in good condition. They had stones and a few inlays. When the fad had 52 days at the sea, the third monitoring was carried out on November 16, 2017. The fad still presented inlays and was still in good condition. A fourth monitoring of the fad was carried out and the conditions had changed. In the floating part, the canes were in good condition. The rope and balsa sticks were firm and with inlays, but the fabric that covered the structure with algae and inlays was already deteriorated. In the hanging part or tail, the fabric did not resist attached to the base. It had no tails, the ballast had been lost, and the ropes were in poor condition. With the Technical University of the North in Ibarra, The abaca fiber was analyzed and the conclusion were as follow. After 67 days at the sea, the abaca fabric lost 94% resistance because before the deployment, abaca had 259.51 kilogram force, and in the fourth monitoring, its breaking strength had dropped to 13.81 kilogram force. Among the materials tested by the FIP of Tunacons, the abaca fabric had greater resistance to salt water. And for this reason, the Technical University of the North in Ecuador suggested applying a process to the fiber for protection in the alkaline medium, since previously raw fiber had been used without any processing. They proposed to give it a special treatment with the projection of extending the useful life of the material. 2 different treatments were applied on the abaca fiber and also to the cabuya fiber so that they could be tested at the same time. The first treatment includes reactant resin and silicone microemulsion. The second treatment includes reactant resin, silicone, and antibacterial microemulsion. The third treatment was only for the tissue of cabuya and has acrylic polymer self-cross-linker and antibacterial. In this deployment of samples, we also test the resistance of paraffin cotton, braided and with lint. The images that are shown here are of the fabrics with treatment after 31 days at sea. The companies that are part of the project have expressed their strong and determined commitment to the sustainable development of tuna population and to adopting and supporting the best strategies for the conservation and their ecosystems. Tunacons actively participates in actions that lead the fishery to an ideal state in favor of the conservation of the species.
Ok, muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you very much for watching this video. I believe it is very didactic for you to actually understand what we've been working on. This video was made at the station near the coast.
Pruebas en la costa, en nuestra
And so besides these initial tests at the station, we also carry out tests at the sea. With our fleet in Tunacons, our captains started cooperating and taking these fats, and in the first trials with jute, they only last for 25 days. Later on with agave, the tops was 45 days, and then with abaca we had 67 days. Besides the testing in the classrooms, we put also the fats at sea for testing them. And out of the 22 first sets made, we catched in the case of abaca fats with the largest amount of fats tested. With the first 22 sets, we reached 611 tons catch. So we saw that these sort of fats also help catch the tuna, and this was an uncertainty that the crew members and captains had. And so therefore, it was shown that these fats could be effective in fishing. How effective? We are still working on that in the next stages of the project. Now, here we have another question for you. Where do you think the RMFOs should focus to protect tropical tuna populations? Where should they focus? On the overcapacity fleet or in the number of fats in the water? We would like to know your opinion. Where should the work of scientists of RMF FOs be regarding the management of tuna fishing and its handling as populations.
Gracias por estar contestando.
Thank you very much for answering the questions.
Gracias por la respuesta. La
Thank
mayoría
you
de
for
las
your answers. Most people believe we need to work actually in the fleet capacity, which is the one that directly affects or could have more impact on tuna population. I coincide with that answer of most people as well.
su respuesta.
Thank you very much for your time and for your answers.
En este trabajo también ya
Now,
en la
in
segunda
this work, during the second stage of Tunacons work, once we got the first results in degradable fats, we started having alliances with science and technology. We believed it was very important to have reached that first testing stage of degradable fats. We realized that abaca, this natural fiber, lasted for 67 days, but this wasn't enough because traditional fats usually last for a year or more for fishermen, and this is an important component for tropical tuna fishing. Since 2019, we'll look for this scientist and technological backup so that we could find improvements in our natural fibers resistance. So this abaca, how could it be strengthened? And so we look alliances with science and technology, and we were able to find the Technical University
sí, para que haga
of the Technical Northern University in the textile aspect, and they actually confirmed that abaca in seawater lasted for 67 days, and the recommendation from the technical point of view was to improve this material with treatments with different natural materials that could improve the resistance of this sort of material. And so in this way, we got to this Northern Technical University, and we were able to prove what we had already tested at sea.
nos explicaron en la universidad
They explained to us in the university that the fabric is made out of rub and wool. And so, according to this objective, what we need to do is reinforce, strengthen one of these more than others. So we signed an MOU with the Northern Technical University of Ecuador. So we were able to get equipment for them to test this at their laboratories and to carry out the recommendations. And the main recommendation is continue with a treatment process of the natural material.
de 15 tratamientos
We
diferentes
tried about
materiales
15 different material, vegetable and animal treatments without chemicals. 3 of them become more efficient. And here in the video, we can see the new material at the station being tested with additional material to improve
el primer
resistance
material que nos
and
resultó
strength. So the first material that allow us to increase the strength of abaca was palm oil, which is a vegetable oil which increased the duration from 67 days to 99 days. This is for abaca. This was an improvement. You can see the treatment of the material in the laboratory in the technical university, in the Northern Technical University, and obviously we carried out tests at the sea.
la resistencia
The other material that helped us improve the resistance with similar amount of days was the beef fat, which also lasted for 99 days. Obviously, this is animal fat. And as you can see here, the treatment of the fiber was carried out with this beef fat to increase its resistance.
el principal material
But the
que nos
main material that helped
de
us
la vaca
improve the resistance of abaca was natural rubber, which
3 días
led us to 123 days of lifespan development of abacas. You can see here the fabric treatment is being carried out, and these very important results were reached and achieved. So almost 4 months duration with this covering of natural rubber in fats developed in an artisan way. All of the material that we talked about before, here you can see our technicians. The one you see here is actually Jose Luis Garcia, the coordinator of the non-entangling degradable projects. He is also going to be making the deployment of FADs in our experimental units. He coordinates with the fleet heads and captains the strategy for the implementation of degradable FADs in the vessels, and he also coordinates together with the IATTC. Therefore, he's a very important man for us. Now we would like to have brainstorming. If you could answer in this chat. We would like to see if you can contribute with fresh ideas to the work we're doing with Tunacons regarding what other materials would you recommend? What other materials would you test in case you have experience of these topics, or what you can suggest regarding improving the resistance and strength of the materials as Tunacons is doing? If you can write your ideas in the chat, we will be very grateful. Along the talk, you can keep doing that. You can keep answering and giving us your suggestions. Now, another important part of the process for non-entangling degradable fats is a project that we have together with the IATTC and with the collaboration of the European Union funds to develop testing of degradable products into prototypes, fat prototypes. Here you can see the first prototype. Part of the material used in these prototypes are made with bamboo, with abaca ropes in these dimensions. Prototype 1 is usually used by a sort of fleet of one of the companies participating in Tunacons, and prototype number 2 is the one mostly used by the other 4 companies part of Tunacons. These are the characteristics, the sizes, and based on all of the experience that we have achieved in other stages regarding the model, the material, together with the recommendations of the scientists of the IATTC, we decided upon these 2 prototypes to carry out experimental tests. So far, we have placed more than 400 fads called now NEDfads. Each NEDfad, it goes with a paired control fad, with a traditional fad, and this to carry out a comparison. So this is being done with the scientific community of the IATTC together with Tunacons. And so we place the same plate, the same number plate in both of them. The fad, the red plate goes for the traditional fad, the green one for the net fad. Part of this whole process, just to summarize in the videos that you can see, the upper part, you can see the crew members deploying these NEDfads. We do this through continuous training and workshops where we have brainstorm and where we share knowledge. This is not only done by the IATTC or Tunacons, we consult with them. We have these workshops, they make their designs, the suggestions, and you can also see our people are vessels involved here. You have Engineer Leon, he is the president of survey group, part of Tunacons, and he's also there giving talks, recommendations, listening to the crew members, and where we exchange these criteria so that all together we can become a team proposing strategies for the implementation of NEDfads. Summarize. So far, this is actually a wider work being carried out, and it's being taken care of by the analysts of the IATTC. But so far, we have 32 eco sets and 62 traditional sets, the bird control fad. According to the results we have had so far, stated by the IATTC, tells us that in the case of eco fats or degradable fats, we have catch an average per set 34.5 tons versus traditional fats that in average have caught 30.4 tons. What is the sense of this? It's seeing if they are working, if they have the same effectiveness and efficiency to get enough catches in this sort of new type of prototype. And this was a main concern of the crew members and captains. It is important to tell you, and actually this is one of the most complex elements of technological changes that happen along these processes, and it is the difficulty of changing the mindset, the crew's mindset. They have preconceived ideas. Like 4 years ago, for example, when we told them they had to change the fat for a new prototype, they just gave us that look, like, are you serious? You're crazy. And it is like they have a preconceived idea of how fishing works, and so they needed to keep the same productive strategies. But for this, we've overgone a whole changing process, workshops, trainings. Here you can also see Jose Luis out of the water as well. This is also a part of his life in land. So he is Aquaman and a landman as well. But based on his experience with the crew, they keep exchanging criteria, and thanks to the fisherman idea, we tested different ideas, different materials that have helped us a lot to achieve these advances that we've made so far. We need to thank all of the staff, all of the crew, captains, staff, fleet heads, coordinating with their vessels, coordinating with the IATTC staff. This has allowed us to generate this amazing change for the tuna fleet in the EPO. So in summary, what we can do is that we believe that we have made advancements in getting 100% degradable fat, and with improvement work in the resistance of the material, we would be able to reach this aspect of getting more lifespan of 7 to 8 months of fats for fisheries. So far we have reached 4 months, but we've made important advancements, as you've seen in the process. We started with 20 days, and now we have about 4 months. So by changing and improving the material and technological improvements, the cooperation with the Northern Technical University to improve on the fats. So the new prototypes with this additional material will allow us to have a fat lasting in between 6 to 8 months, which is a reasonable amount of time. The second aspect that we were able to show fishermen, I already talked about this, is that this new prototype, this change to fat theory, can also bring school of tuna, which would be efficient for tuna catches. And so they have a similar average, and actually a little bit more than traditional fats. So we were able to show this to fishermen that this change that is carried out in the latest years would not affect their fishing systems. So what are the next steps for all of those wanting to know what we're doing at Tunacons? We're going to continue working on the strength of fats and their resistance, and we're going into a manufacturing stage as well. At more industrialized level, our fats are degradable fats built by craftsmen in an artisan way. And according to the Northern Technical University, if we industrialize the process, if we do it with more sophisticated equipment for developing and creating the fabrics, which are the main part of the fats, we're going to reach greater resistance. So this is our next step. Finding companies that here in the country or outside of the country would start processing these fats industrially, and afterwards, no, well, not afterwards, another important step that we're about to take by the end of this year is starting a testing stage at the sea in more aggressive stage, not only with the IATTC, but as Tunacons we have committed that by the end of this 2020, 20% of our fats, traditional fats, will be replaced by eco-fats and NEDfads in accordance with the experiences we have. So there is going to be an obligation on behalf of the 44 vessels comprising our fleet that are part of the Tunacons project. 20% will of the fats they use will have to be eco-fats and 100% degradable fats. It's a more aggressive stage that we're going to implement from December this year. And since 2020, this is going to be of great use because we will have a better analysis of our results and improvement of materials of result so that in upcoming years we'll be able to have 100% of fats to be degradable, and that the Tunacons fleet will become an example, a role model for the region and for the world of all of the work that we have carried out. Now, the last thing we would like to ask you to is new brainstorming, new fresh ideas of what other technologies, not only materials, but technologies, specialists in this aspect, in this subject, you can recommend. Research centers, universities, what could help us? Can you please write this down in the chat so that we can get these suggestions and so that we can continue with this core work of tuna accounts of developing degradable fats. Now we are open to questions. You will always find us in our networks, social networks of tuna accounts. You will find our advancements and you can also ask questions. So this is my presentation. I would like to thank you a lot. And now I'm going to answer some questions that I see in the chat and some other questions that we might have. Thank you very much. Here we are receiving in the Zoom platform some comments all along the presentations as questions and as chats. So we're going to begin with the questions. Hilario from the ISSF asks if there is a difference in between biodegradable and degradable,
y dónde se puede obtener el plan
and
de plantados.
where can the fat management plan of Ecuador be found?
Gracias, Hilario.
Thank you, Hilario.
Hablamos de plantados
In the
degradables,
case, we're talking about degradable fats,
que sea orgánico, que sea vegetal o
but we're
animal.
talking about organic, vegetable, or animal material that can be degraded in a certain amount of time in case it gets lost. Talking about biodegradable according to specialists is a little bit more complex, but our position is working on this material you have seen that has provided us with good results.
Ecuador está publicado en acuerdo ministerial en la página
FAD
web.
Management Plan of Ecuador is published in the Ministry of Foreign Trade and Fisheries. I can send it to your email as well if you need, so that you can get to know what the contents are. It is also published in Tunacons website in the EcoFADs section.
Juan Pedro Monteagudo
Pedro Monteagudo asks if a specific model with which the 20% of fats would be replaced.
Yo diría que básicamente
I would say
definido, pero
that it has been defined, but actually tomorrow we have a meeting with Tunacons with the fleet heads and the company owners to define the options of prototype that might be what we have already been testing with the commission staff, plus the work of natural rubber resistance.
otra alternativa
Unless
de
other companies might give us other alternatives within the testing that we have had. But the ideal prototype for the fleet is prototype number 2, the design we saw with a natural rubber protection. And for another part of the fleet, prototype 1, probably with natural rubber protection as well, or animal fat or vegetable oils. But according to our research, natural rubber brings the best results. Within the brainstorm, Cesar Viteri asks us to try cannabis fiber, and Carigan asks us if we've considered the use of cotton and ropes, cotton canvas and ropes, treated and untreated. Have you tested cotton ropes from a Spanish company? It's Acorde. He says these are ropes that have been tested by the ISSF. Yes, we have tried cotton. And I will give the floor to Jose Luis Garcia, who's listening to us. He has carried out some tests or knows about some tests regarding the use of cotton as an option. Carry on, Jose Luis.
Sí, buenos días. Aquí sí se ha probado con la fibra de
Here we have
algodón.
indeed
Hay empresas que han
tested
trabajado, siguen
cotton
trabajando con
fibers.
IATTC
Some
y han
companies
hecho
have worked and
pruebas
keep working
con
with
plantados, prototipos
ISSF,
así mismo como
and they have
utilizan el
carried
índigo,
out
simplemente
tests
con cuerdas de
with
algodón
fats that they
y
use in
no ha
the
dado
Indic
resultado,
Ocean,
¿no?
and
Las
this
pruebas que
hasn't been
las han hecho, pues
successful. The
parece
tests
ser
they
que
have
los
carried
océanos
out,
son
apparently
diferentes, los
oceans are
comportamientos
different
de los materiales también son diferentes. Entonces,
than the materials are
incluso
different as
pruebas
well.
de
So
estas empresas que mencionan
tests of these
que utilizan en
companies
el Índico también han venido.
in the Indic
El
Ocean
problema
have
también
also
es
come.
que la importación
The
de este
problem
tipo de
is that
materiales
the
acá a
import
Ecuador
of
pues
this sort of
resulta un poco
material
muy
to
caro
Ecuador
para las empresas
results
y por
expensive
eso
for the
quizás las pruebas
companies.
han sido pocas. Pero los
So that's
resultados
why
que han
there haven't
tenido sobre
been
el uso con
further tests,
material
but the
algodón
result they've had with cotton
no han tenido
have
la
not
satisfacción que las empresas
been
necesitan.
as satisfying
Pero sí
as
se ha
the
hecho pruebas con
company
algodón.
needs, but we have indeed tested cotton. So, continuing with the questions, Carlos Massal suggests using cannibal hemp, which probably is abaca. Probably Jose Luis can talk about this in why they say an industry is using this in greater scale, more than 30 uses, even marine use as ropes. Jose Luis?
Sí, si es el caño del cannabis, lo que
Yes,
pasa,
if
la
in
obtención de la
cannabis,
fibra,
that's cannabis, cannabis hemp, the
como
obtention
es el
of
problema,
this
la importación.
fiber,
Por eso nosotros
that's the problem, the import.
hemos trabajado con el
That's
abacá,
why we've
porque eso es lo
worked
que
with
tenemos
abaca,
de manera
because
sostenible, o sea,
this
como
is what we
para
have
poder
in a sustainable way,
resolver el problema, ¿no? O sea,
like
con
to solve
cannabis,
the
con
problem.
cáñamo
With
del cannabis,
cannabis,
también sí se podría hacer porque
we could
he analizado
also
esa fibra,
do
la
this
he
because
estudiado,
I've analyzed
pero
this
no
fiber,
tenemos
I've
las cantidades
studied it, but
necesarias
we
aquí.
do not have the
Pero todo
amounts that
depende de
we would
que
need.
tengamos esta fibra
But it would
busquemos
depend
un
on
proveedor de este
having
tipo de
this
fibra.
fiber or looking
Eh,
for a supplier of
la
this sort of
importación de este
fiber.
tipo
The
de fibras
import of this sort of
de procesos
fiber
en tipo cuerdas
for the
o tejidos,
processes of
a veces muchas
building
veces es el problema
ropes or
porque al
fabric,
hacer
it might
importaciones pues
become a
sale un poco
problem
caro.
because if we're
Pero
importing,
sí sé
this
la
would be
resistencia del
expensive.
cannabis que
However, I do
es
know
bastante fuerte
that
y
cannabis
eso es
is
lo que les
very
puedo decir.
strong and resistant. This is what I can tell you about this. Thank you, Jose Luis. Danny Harris asks us if we are assuring 100% of avoidance of any material, plastic, rubber, etc., that will not natural biodegrade. Yes, actually, that's what we're doing. We're trying to keep that 100% degradable in all of the fats components. Francisco Roballo says, this is an interesting proposal. Jefferson Murua says, his greetings. Hi, Jefferson. Greetings. Let's continue with the questions. Jefferson Murua says, have you heard of oceanographic fats that the ISSF is testing the useless material and lowers the cost? Yes, we have listened to that. Actually, Gala Moreno carried out a presentation on this yesterday and last month as well. And this is an interesting proposal. We might try this in the future. Krista Stevenson says, is there any cost that you've identified so that the integrity of the structure be effective? It's this biological, saltwater degradation, or another issue that can make a difference in approach to extending life of fat. Well, Jose Luis, would you like to answer?
Sí, el problema de la degradación
Yes.
de las
The
fibras,
problem of the
como se
fibers
trata de un material
degradation,
natural,
as we're
orgánico,
talking about a
vegetal,
natural organic vegetable
es
material,
degradado por los microorganismos
it is
marinos.
degraded
Son
by
fibras
sea
compuestas por
microorganisms.
celulosa.
These are
Y estos
fibers
microorganismos pues, se
comprised
alimentan de
by
eso y hacen que la
cellulose,
fibra
and
se
these
degrade. Es por eso
microorganisms
que iniciamos
feed on this, so that's what
ver
degrades this.
tratamientos
So this is why we started
a la
looking for
fibra para
treatment,
protegerla, para
so
su
that we could treat the
putrefacción o
fiber to
degradación
protect
a
it
través de los
from being
microorganismos.
degraded through these microorganisms so
Prácticamente
fast.
existen muchos
Practically,
tratamientos
there
anteriormente
are a lot of
utilizaban
treatments
tratamientos
before
para
they
este
used to
tipo
use
de
treatments
fibras
as well for
en
these
los
sort of
años
fibers
1940,
during
30, en
the
que la
30s,
pesquería utilizaba
1930s,
redes con este tipo de
where
materiales,
fisheries
algodón,
used nets with
cáñamo,
other
lo que es
sorts
vinila,
of
y utilizaban diferentes
material,
tratamientos porque esos eran los altos costos de
cotton,
aquel entonces.
cannabis,
Entonces,
agave,
en esa época utilizaban tratamientos
abaca. So
químicos
that's
como
in those
peróxido
times they
cúprico,
used chemical
pero sabemos hoy en día que
treatments
todas
with
esas cosas
boric
son
acid,
tóxicas
but we
y lo
know
que
that
hemos
that's
estado
toxic
buscando es
now.
cosas
So what
así
we're
mismo
looking
naturales,
for
¿no?
is natural
Para alargar
things,
la vida
so
de la
that
fibra.
we can
Por eso
increase
hemos
the
trabajado
fiber's
con lo que es
lifespan.
grasas,
That's why we
en este
have
caso
worked with
también
fats,
taninos. Hemos hecho pruebas
and
también con
we have
sangrados,
carried
con
out
extractos
with
de árboles.
tests with
Y ahora hoy
tree
en día pues
extracts such as
hemos
sangre
probado
de
con lo que es
drago,
caucho,
and nowadays we're
lo que
trying
es
with
látex, el
rubber,
látex natural.
latex,
Y
natural latex,
La idea es esa, ¿no? Ir
And that's the
probando,
idea.
dándole un tratamiento, así
Testing,
mismo 100%
providing
natural,
the
con la
fiber
idea de
with a
que haya
natural,
menos impacto en los
100%
ecosistemas y
natural
no haya
treatment to
contaminación
lower the impact in the
marina.
ecosystem and further not to be water pollution. Thank you, Jose Luis. We only have a couple comments. Martin Hall from the IATTC says there were a lot of cotton types. Some were tried, one was tried, which is apparently two-way, but there are many more. And Gustavo Garcia Bolaño says that the use of these vegetable materials may be good or bad for the livestock sector if all the traditional fats would get into ecofat. How would there be an influence in the economy? There is no calculation specifically, but if we process abaca here in Ecuador, that would be better than exporting it from Thailand. We have a strong import of abaca from Asia, mainly Thailand. So if we use that, it will for sure generate more labor and it would be better income for the people planting and harvesting abaca. Thank you very much. This is all.
Hay una mano alzada.
There is a hand up. Someone's raising their hand. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for your questions, for your recommendations. Our progress and our advancement will be seen in social networks. You have our email addresses as well. You can send an email to us and wait for our next Tunacons seminar in October. We're going to be exchanging criteria on handling tuna fisheries in a sustainable way here in the EPO. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.